Good afternoon. I'm Kirk Alexander. I'm the technology lead for the OIPP project, which is a work in progress and has been and continually will be. I'm going to give you a little bit of a status update on our RFP search for the online system that we hopefully will all be using later. I'll warn you now, the talk is already out of date from what I've learned this morning, but at least it's sort of on track. Just a quick history here. And by the way, I'm going to try to go through just a handful of slides pretty quickly, and then the idea is get back to discussion about other things that you want to see, questions that have come up in your discussions around the tables, and related to technology in any way you like. So this process started back early in April. I got the job of writing an RFP for a system that doesn't exist, and the result of that was we got 5 bidders, and each of those bidders gave us a system to play with. We have a review committee that has reviewed the proposals and the systems. Bidders were given a chance to ask us a bunch of questions. That session went pretty well, and we answered a lot of questions. And we were able to cull our bidders down to 3. Just as of this morning, that we started scheduling their presentations for later in July. It's a little later than we'd originally intended, but let me just talk about why that is and how it went. So you don't have to read this whole slide. The idea here is just to tell you a little bit about what we were trying to accomplish with the RFP and what the focus was. What's in red there is all about we're trying to find a partner, somebody who's going to be able to take the kinds of issues we're hearing about this morning, about the technology, about being able to interact with videos, interact with the students, and try to pull all that together. We really didn't believe that there was such a system when we started, and most of you have said that. So we're trying to find somebody who would work with us to help build that. We have a starting point. We hope that starting point is strong, and then we move forward from there to build out what we need over time. You may have remembered this diagram. This was sort of our conceptual diagram. I think we had this out early in January, actually. And it came from discussions with some of you and amongst ourselves to try to build, this deals with the whole array of questions that it takes to put together a system. We knew from the outset that the kind of issues you were raising this morning were going to start to come up, and indeed we had video engagement and video production as an element very early on. We also had the web conferencing, the ability to talk to students and interact with them in real time or not in real time. And we had the need to take software either that faculty here have written and want to have their students interact with, or that other open source projects, other commercial projects need to use as well. So those were there from the beginning, but now that we've been hearing this kind of thing from you both today and in the roadmaps that some of you have been delivering already, we're using that in the review committee to go back and filter what we're hearing from the vendors and what we hope to get. There's one other piece of the work that you could care less about, I'm sure, but we have to worry about. And so a whole parallel set of dialogues was initiated. It was about May 23rd, I think. We had an initial discussion. There was a registrar's meeting from around the UCs. We started to talk about how we were going to import course data, how those courses were going to show up in catalogs, a whole lot of really complicated issues. But the registrars are willing to work with us. We're going to have some simple solutions to that for the pilot project. And I think we've actually got them starting to think about the problem in new ways. And maybe this project will actually make it possible to have a cross-listed course across the UC someday. So how did the responses go? Well, it was actually a very interesting process. It was a complete surprise who bid. There were some familiar partners. The last bullet there, there are a couple. There's a Sakai partner or a Sakai bidder and a Moodle bidder, which we expected. Some of the biggest players out there didn't bid, and players that we'd never heard of before came forward. In their bids were some very interesting ideas. It's kind of, if you could have a way to assemble pieces from every single bidder, we'd probably have the perfect system we really want. But I guess that's what my job is to figure out how to do that. But I learned an awful lot. I learned about new techniques for managing things. We got a little bit of response to the analytics piece of it. There are some people that have done some pretty impressive work. Most of the systems now have some really basic analytics, which is not quite as much as we wanted, but at least we were seeing them deal with that. And a fair amount of experience there in the middle on the video production. Being able to deliver video, being able to integrate online communications, synchronous communications with systems. However, it was a bit of a challenge. So what we learned, a couple of things here. I think we learned that most of the commercial vendors out there don't have a concept of being a partner, and that we're going to have to educate them with that, and it may actually take going through the negotiation process for what we're really going to pay for and what they're going to really deliver before we can completely hammer that out. So we'll see how that goes. You know, what we really wanted was a consultant that had a whole big arsenal of tools behind him, and that doesn't really exist either. So that's kind of interesting. Learning analytics is, some of you have spoken about the Khan Academy or the Newton systems. There's some incredible stuff out there right now, but it's still a fairly emerging field. There are not just sort of off-the-shelf things you can go buy and plug into a system and have them work. So we're going to have to push a little harder on that. We may have to go to some partners who weren't bidders and talk to, if we end up ordering a contract, how we're going to bring some of those more advanced, learning analytics into the system. But we did get, we did get to see some responses to that. And there were lots of gaps, lots of little custom pieces that we've been talking about in various groups that we'd like to see get integrated in the system, better editing tools with graphics built in, how to deliver video, video that we can interact with, like using a tool like Matterhorn. Those are things that the vendors are aware of, but we're going to have to push them a little bit harder on how long it's going to take, how easily it's going to be to integrate those and make sure they're willing to do that. A couple things they didn't really address very well at all: social networking kinds of tools, tools that would allow students to interact with each other in an ad hoc kind of way, more flexible assessment capabilities. And what was really bizarre about this, and one of our finalists, in fact, has very sophisticated techniques inside their system. Oops, sorry about that. Inside their system to do to enable students to work with one another, to work with their faculty, and they didn't even talk about it. So we had done a fair amount of work before we wrote the RFP, talking to vendors, having them show us what they did. Looking at some of the emerging systems. So we had an idea of some of the capabilities that were out there, and yet in the responses that we got, they were sort of ignored. They didn't even toot their own horns. I don't quite know why, but the question then becomes, how do we deal with this? So you don't have to, I'm not going to read all these bullets bit by bit, but basically the approach that we've got now, as I said, the bidders are all going to be asked to come back and give a formal presentation to the committee. All of you would be welcome to listen in on those if you want to. We'll have some people from the Senate committees participating as well, so we get some of their input. But the basic idea is the committee came up with a couple pages of questions that they felt they didn't have the answers to in the responses that we got from the bidders. We may have had them from one or two of the bidders, but not across the board. So we collated all those questions, and those have now been sent back to the bidders, and they have whatever it is, 2 or 3 weeks between now and when their final presentations are, to address those directly. We're also going to hit them pretty hard on the bottom bullet. We're going to ask them explicitly, how would you partner with us? How do you see that working? And we're actually going to give them the Matterhorn example. So here's a piece of software we really think we'd like to use. How would you go about doing that? What are you going to need from us? What are you going to need to learn? Do you have the kind of programmers that can do that? Are we going to have to find those together? I think that example will tell us a lot about both their willingness to do that, and the technical expertise or lack thereof that they have to pull it off. So where are we? I think I just kind of went through this. I think we need to see this process through. We need to really see how those presentations come out and how well the dialogue goes. I think at the same time, we know there's probably bigger gaps than we had hoped for in the beginning. So we're having discussions with people across the UCs. You guys should have discussions with me about your needs. And we may be looking for resources on our own campuses to bolster what we might get from an actual bidder. Assuming the process works well, then sometime in mid-July, we would make an award of some kind to a partner to either do the whole kit and caboodle if they can actually do it really well, to be a partner for sure, and maybe maybe it'll play out a little bit differently. Maybe they will just host our system, or maybe they'll do some other things. That's the part of this that's still a work in progress. But meanwhile, there's other things that you've been asking about. We want to make sure you know that we're here to help with this too. So everything from the discussion about how do I record myself and do one of those Ken Burns kind of videos, there are answers to those questions that are sort of completely independent of the RFP process. Yesterday we had the instructional designers and the media people from around the campuses get together for the first time, so they're starting to have a stronger dialogue. The instructional designers are, of course, your first point of contact. But they are now beginning to know who their partners are on the campuses, what video services we can deliver. We've got those people in the room. We've got animators in the room. All of those are resources that we want to make available to you. We have people that have worked on interesting interactive assessment capabilities using authoring software. Some of you are doing that here. Some of the media people know how to do some of that. So, if you're asking yourself the same kinds of questions that Mark was presenting, hopefully it's our job. Well, it is our job to go find different solutions to that. Maybe newer technologies that have emerged. Maybe just teaching you how to do what Mark did with the questions in the middle of a video. You're supposed to rely on us to help you figure these things out. Some of them are going to be kind of universal across your different projects, your different courses, and it would probably make sense for us to arrange for training for you on those aspects or on those pieces of software. What we just need to do is hear from you on what you need and how we can best help. So yeah, I think that's the basic thing. So what I wanted to do is open up quick questions. This is just 3 ideas of what we could talk about. That process that I talked about with the RFP and the questions, we warned the bidders that you guys might come up with more questions today, and then we might be adding to that list. So if you have them or you want to talk to me about them, we have the opportunity to push that back into the process. I heard plenty this morning. This is where I'm already out of date. Got lots of notes on what kinds of things you were asking for this morning. We need to figure out how we're going to deliver some of those things. So by all means, we can talk about that. And then it may be actually in your working with your instructional designers already and in writing your roadmaps, you have started to ask yourselves questions that we haven't heard yet. So great time for some discussion on that. So a couple are there. Good. Roger?
I know you're not going to want to hear this, but... Sorry, can you wait? We have a microphone.
Oh, right. I have some here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying up.
Wow. Anyway, I know nobody likes to hear this or have the discussion, but as faculty members, we've all been in rooms where the candidates who came for interview were not what we expected, and
right.
We had to reopen up the search. Is it a possibility, learning what you've learned, that you might have, would it be better to reopen the bidding process and see if you get something better?
That's a fair question. I think that's what my bullet was about. We want to see this process through before we actually answer that, but there is that possibility. I think the biggest gap we see right now is in the learning analytics, which is also another one of those areas where we know more than the committee knows because of what they actually saw in the proposal. Some of that has to do with some of what is being developed out there was proprietary and kind of, under the smoke cloud when they were writing the proposal, so they couldn't talk about it. Some of that's changed, and we can ask for more. But I think until we actually force them to answer the questions that we've drawn up, we haven't been completely fair to the process. But yes, it's a possibility that we may look at this in a new light. We may decide to do it entirely internal to UC, or we may find a new partner who has emerged since we wrote the process. I think it would have helped if we'd had a broader response. I'm not quite sure why we didn't get, some of the bigger players responding. Good question. David?
Thanks. So I need more? Oh, okay. Thank you. I guess I'm not sure exactly how we're supposed to be interacting with this new common learning environment, because we already have obviously a system in place, and I mean my plan was basically just to use what we have and add on like whatever third-party software we might need.
Right.
Is that something that we would have to rethink?
Yep. let me talk about that. Let me talk about that a little bit. There are quite a lot of reasons, some practical, but some actually to fit the nature of this whole project as a research project in itself. One of the key reasons for having a common learning environment that we put all of the courses in is that then we can start to instrument that environment in the same way across all of the courses. So, for example, if we're trying to learn how much time students spend on a particular video, and which parts of that video they look at. If we're trying to look at what kinds of interactions they have in their chat rooms or in their discussions with each other, and we try to parse that stuff and we try to analyze it to see whether, it's showing things like comprehension. That's going to be very difficult if we had to go out and do it on 9 campuses in 9 different ways. Essentially, it's impossible. So the notion of having a central system is to help us build it in a way that we can gather data on it, and then also so that we can put out there some of the more interesting and more advanced tools that would be very difficult, again, for us to get every campus's own team to integrate in their systems and have it work together. So yeah, the plan is really, and that's why I had that previous slide, all the things that we can help you with. I consider it my job to find the people and the resources to help move content from your existing systems into the common environment once it's available. So we would hope to help you do that and hope to work with you to do that and provide you at least equivalent delivery mechanisms for everything that you've currently got. Yeah, behind you? Yeah, that's a good question. We can start talking about, what you need to, it would be great right now to find out, the scope of what it is you need to move and how much of it's video, and whether you have special tools that you're already using and software that you need to be a part of that. All of those things I need to know so we can figure out how to arrange to bring it across. When we're actually going to have the system depends a little bit on how this RFP process plays out. We'll know by mid-July whether we have a partner or not. That's the best answer I can give to that right now. And then, over the remainder part of the summer, we'll be working towards a solution one way or the other. Is there one over here? No, right in front of you, Kathy. They're all at that table.
I'm channeling my colleague Brian Harvey, who says you need to really value open source software
Correct.
in this equation, because you're one company's bankruptcy away from losing everything. So
Right.
just making sure that that's.
Yeah, I could give you the whole RFP and you can read, but that was a fundamental principle in the process, and back in that kind of boilerplate sort of text that was mentioned. That's part of the evaluation criteria. Actually, all of the final partners are built on systems that the system code itself is open source. And things like Matterhorn that solve a lot of our video problems, also open source. So that is really, kind of a driving principle. We would like to have a partner that would help us integrate open source tools and not proprietary tools. There may be, a couple little special purpose things that for the interim don't have an open source counterpart, and we might choose to use some of those, but otherwise completely agree. Michelle?
Kirk, if we don't find a single contractor, is there any consideration given back to the idea that the campuses continue to use their existing systems, and then you avoid this problem where faculty are having to import or export what they currently have into a completely new
Well,
system?
I think I kind of already answered that. We can talk about that, but I really don't think we want to go there because we'll never get the data collecting that we need to do.
I was kind of following up because, I mean, I understand the big scope, but there's a lot of things that we're tackling as a pilot project. And if it's based on, I think, as far as I understand, I'm not in charge of technology person, but as far as I understand, each campus could, if the parameters are defined, that these data could be provided back to the assessment group. And then maybe we should focus first on sort of making sure that, I think this is what I hear from both, not just the technology side, but from the faculty side, especially the ones that have either already a lot of their, base done, and they want to do more. They're now are challenged to not only create new, but they have to go back and recreate some of the things that they thought they could use.
Right, so the recreating of the stuff they already had really should be our worry.
But at the same time, it's. Oh, sorry. But you said it's our worry, but it's not.
It
just
involves you too as well. No,
Yeah.
I will admit that right now of the three finalists, I said one was a Sakai and one was a Moodle, and depending on those two cover a lot of the systems across UC in general. Doesn't cover all of them, but covers a lot of them. And if you happen to be, let's say the winner is Moodle. If you happen to be in Moodle school, you're going to be a lot happier because it'll be fairly easy to move Moodle stuff over, and same with Sakai. So for some people, it's going to be harder than for others. I think we ought to talk about that at the actual practical, specific level about what's difficult, so that we understand. Even if we don't, even if we can't accommodate you for some reason right now, and we decide there's a reason you have to run it on your own system, we need to understand why that is, because down the road, if this project really takes off and we start doing online courses in UC in a lot larger way, then everything scales up, including all the problems. And then I think the 9-way problem is going to get a lot worse. And the part that I said you don't have to worry about, which was the integration with the student information systems and the course data and the enrollment, all of that, that becomes a 9 times problem as well. And it gets almost impossible. So we have good, strong reasons for trying to come to the common learning environment from the get-go. If we can't do it, we can't do it. But I think we need to try to ask ourselves specifically why we can't do it. And then we cope with the interim if it's really not possible. Yeah. Oh.
Hi, I'm developing a new course, and so I don't have the export worries yet. But I need to design it sooner than when I intend to deploy it, right? And it's my understanding that the common learning environment is largely about delivery and analysis and so on, right? And so I feel like I right now need what I would categorize as a multimedia authoring platform, right?
Right.
Something to create the content now, and I want to make sure I do it in a smart way. What do you say?
Yeah, so that's a good point, and I probably should have had a slide on kind of separating the system and the delivery from the content preparation and what's going to be capable. So one of the reasons I had Matterhorn on the slide so many times is that's a system that's available to us now that, independent of what happens with the RFP, we could start to put up a Matterhorn delivery system for your video needs, and in fact enhance that system to meet some of the more engagement kinds of goals we have. Likewise, on the content side, the basic presentation of little snippets that are not video-based necessarily, but that might have interactive quiz components to them. There are, 3 authoring tools that we're pretty familiar with out there. There's no reason you can't be using those immediately, and those are going to plug into any one of the systems. So this is where a specific dialogue with me or the media people that are in the room, so that gets to us. We'll make sure you get our recommendations on what tools like that to use. So I hope we can keep you moving forward, kind of independent of the system itself. Arnold.
Could you put a cheat sheet or a fact sheet on that information you just said?
Yeah, and that's that came up yesterday too. We're going to collaborate with the media folks and me and the other software folks to build a matrix of tools and approaches that are available immediately and kind of recommended ways to go. Kathy's going to help us make that happen. Dave?
I guess I just see a sort of immediate problem of I'm going to be offering this lecture, online lecture in the winter. We need to be offering the lecture in the winter. It means the enrollment system has to be already in place pretty much by the end of the summer. And am I going to have to replace that enrollment system with your course management?
No, well,
system, or-
the concept on the enrollment system is, and what we got agreement from the registrars would be that for any of the campuses that want to have their students enroll in one of the courses that you're developing, they would have the students register for that course with a designation in the catalog on the current campus. And then behind the scenes, we will import that data into this system, so that you don't have to worry about that. So if we actually move you across, then knowing the enrollments for your class will be there.
But they will still enroll in the system we've got now.
Correct. Yeah. So we will have to duplicate that data and make it available to this system so that once they, when they log in the system, it works just like it does on your campus.
All right, but that system for us is the same as our course management system.
Correct.
So essentially, we're going to be keeping our system, and you're
No,
going to be...
no, we're going to have our course management system as well, but we're going to have information about your students in our system.
But the student interface.
Oh, the student, what the student sees is going to be this course management system, hopefully.
So we're going to have to get our students to register for this course?
No. No, the registration stays the same, and I somehow have to go to your registrar, get the data for your students, and import it into this system.
But I thought the student interface is going to be your system.
Right, but it'll
So-
be magic.
I'm sorry?
It'll be magic.
It'll be magic.
That your students will log into this system, it will check in with your campus, find out that they're really authorized to take this course, and then given access to
But I mean,
your
our
job.
students, they go and they sign up for our course with our system.
Right.
They're going to have to go to a different system to sign up for this course?
Not to sign up, but to access the course materials. So there are a couple somewhat awkward things in there, in just that we don't have time. The registrars told us we don't have time to actually have them broadcast information about courses all around the campus, so we are going to have to find, sort of a place to make information about the online courses visible to people. It's possible that we're going to have some special cases for the courses that launch first. Depends on how far we get by January. But, I mean, we're intending to have that certainly be possible in the time frame that you have to teach that course. Yeah, those are the more challenging ones. Well, the ones that are launching now are pretty much working out of their own systems, right? Because the early ones are more about kind of, yeah, but also sort of fitting that course and letting us analyze it in the context of this project, but not revamping it. They're not going to get revamped in time for fall, that's for sure.
Right,
Yeah.
so let me just make this clear. So I've got 1,000 students in this course. Out of those, in the winter, maybe 50 will be signing up for an online lecture. They'll still sign up for the traditional discussion sections in that quarter, though. So that means those students that sign up for the online lecture just those students, they will have to sign up through your system for the online lecture and through my system for the discussion center?
No, we were still hoping that there will be a designation in your course catalog on your campus where they can sign up for that special online lecture in your system.
Oh, okay, so they'll be able to sign up through our system, and from the student's point of view, it still look the same.
Yeah, that part of it.
I see.
Right, and then they'll have to learn one new link in order to get to the materials in this system.
When they're in the course, once
Right.
they're in the course, they'll need to go through this other system in order to access
Correct.
materials.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's, you're addressing one of the harder nuts to crack, but for the first time around, that's why we said, let's just have the students stay registered on their own campuses, because otherwise we'd have to solve the entire Common Catalog problem in a month, and that's just not possible. So we can talk about it more if if you're particularly concerned, but I think we'll try to make it work. Any other thoughts about, we're out of time? Okay, so I guess we're up for Shlomo now. Thank you. Oh, there it is.
So we can get we have three speakers, if they could come up and sit up at the panel to be looked at for a while.
To be looked at for a while. Where is PowerPoint now coming up? I can get to here, but I can't click on the menus.
You can just probably unplug, can't you? Go do that.
Do which?
You just unplug, or does this have to be,
No,
is this
wait,
computer
this-
running here?
It's got, yeah, it's
Oh, I
got
see.
his slides on it,
I see.
and it's like half stuck.
Yeah, so that isn't starting to.
Yeah, it doesn't, I can move around some things, but I can't seem to get the mouse on this. Wonder if it's this thing taking over. I can't switch between applications. We're back in that state where it gets stuck and I can't click on an application. So I can go through here, and I go to PowerPoint, but then I can't get it in full screen mode.
It's really weird.
Yeah. We got it doing too many things at once.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Huh?
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Is there an error?
There might be a window that we're stuck on that we can't see. Okay, so you're doing this one?
Yeah. So pretend this is you at the beginning of a lecture, and something isn't working right. We have that realism that somebody wanted earlier.
But here you have all this technical assistance.
True.
I can't even click on that. Okay, so I'm gonna have to, I think, force reboot.
All right. All right, so we're going to have to take a minute and restart the computer. So let's take this opportunity, if anybody has any suggestions for the breakouts later. I think 1 o'clock was supposed to be the time, but if anybody has any ideas, we can do that. Or any questions that you have that haven't been addressed yet, that we can either address now or plan to address before things are over.
I have a question to the speaker we just had.
Okay? A question for, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
You want to use the microphones, or are we not taping this?
Yeah. Sure.
yeah, I have a joint appointment in another department, and there's always this politics about my department is paying for the TA.
Yes, I've heard that one before.
How are you going to solve these problems where if a student from one campus takes a course?
Just a second. It's coming. It's on. It was fucking on.
Oh, it's back.
How are you going to solve these problems if a student from one campus is taking a course from another campus and the other campus is paying for the TAs and the professor, the teaching load is by department, et cetera, et cetera?
That sounds like a Dan question. Where's Dan? I just comment, there's a technical aspect to that problem, and then the sort of budget and political aspect of that problem. My job's to worry about the technical aspect of it. So I'm going to punt on that one. I don't know, Mara, do you have anything to?
I'll give a little answer.
Oh, yeah,
from
okay, Keith
Dan's.
can maybe take it.
Well, there's a whole issue related to funding and how it's going to follow the student or not, or what's going to be done. And there are several different task forces that have been put together this summer that are starting to address some of those issues. And one of them is a financial task force that is looking at both within UC, if students take courses at other campuses, how is that going to be managed financially, and also eventually for non-UC students taking it, how the funds are going to go. So it's being addressed, and nobody knows the exact answers. There's a number of different models. They're getting people from a variety of places involved. The Senate has some people from planning and budget that's getting involved. There are people in the finance part of OP that are getting involved, and there's lots of different ideas that are being thrown around, but no solutions exactly yet, but something will be in place. Particularly, this probably the next year won't be a super issue, but as we start offering things more across campuses, that's when it will be a bigger issue. So there's more coming. Keep asking the question because it's an important one, but it just hasn't been able to be addressed fully yet this time. Any other questions while we're waiting for this to get going? Yes.
That's me. Hi. There are certain guidelines, particularly with our unionized student, graduate student pool, on what their expectations are in effort on being teaching assistants.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to change with online courses, and how are we going to deal with enrollments, standard size of discussion groups?
Again, questions I probably can't completely answer, but I'll tell you at least where some of the thinking towards there is. I think primarily a lot of things will probably follow the campus policy that you have, that this is more building things within your structure than putting on new ones. If your discussion sizes are typically a certain amount, that's probably the type of thing that you would expect to have in this, and funding would have to be made available. There may be reasons to do it differently, and those will have to evolve as it occurs. But it's another area where there are lots of things that have to be dealt with, and we're just in the process of starting that. So if anybody has suggestions on ways to go, we're certainly open to listening to those things. But it's going to take a little time to identify all the problems, go into a system that's been here in a very different way for a long time, and try to change that to adapt to the new environment. And Dan will have all the questions eventually. All right.
They were on the desktop, but now they're not there. When we restarted. No. Any of these look familiar?
Oh, Shlomo's is right on the desktop.
Was. It's not anymore. Nope.
I'm sharing my whole computer.
Yeah, I didn't throw them away.
I'm going to resist the comment about the efficiency of the lecture.
Yeah, so I think we need to load these presentations again. So we just need. Does somebody have a flash drive? Yeah.
I have one on mine already.
You have them on yours already? Yeah. I'll take yours. That'd be best. Sorry for the delay, folks.
Okay. Dan, while you were out, there were a couple of questions about financing of TAs from other campuses and things like that, which I informed them we have a couple of task forces that are looking into those issues. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to those kinds of things.
So I just, at the risk of just repeating what Keith already said, we have like 16 task forces working over the summer. One on course articulation, which David and Keith are involved in, which is how to actually make courses that can be available across the system if the registrars permit that to happen. That's a Senate issue and a registrar issue, and it's a complex set of things. But there is a path through. I think we're pretty David's very confident that there's a path through, and we're going to hold him to it. And then there's some implementation work that Kirk is working on with the registrars and others, so we're confident about that. If you enable cross-campus instruction, the question is, how do you pay the marginal cost of instructing students who are not from your campus when they come to your campus virtually it's the marginal cost of the GSI, basically. So we put a budget group together to look into that. I thought it was a simple question, but the budget group said they wanted to understand the entire revenue sharing model of the entire operation. And so it became less of a, which makes sense because you want to actually think about the marginal cost of cross-campus instruction in the context of your other costs and revenue sharing. So we will have draft answers to all these things on September 1st, and we will circulate them to you. And I don't know, while I guess we're still waiting, all of these initiatives, if you're interested in knowing about them, participating in them, I know you have many other things to do, but we're always looking for volunteers. And Do Quinn is documenting the work of the summer, which is on articulation, on getting the common learning environment, on the budget issues. We'll circulate that to you, and if you have an interest, let us know. If you don't have an interest, that's okay too. Is that
I think it
helpful?
it's it. Any other questions while we're waiting? Yeah.
Into designing teaching load question. So some of the courses look like you put a lot of time in designing the course, but then especially if it's delivered in a synchronous way where you just post the materials online and then hold office hours and then other faculty members presumably can also teach that course. Does that count as a full teaching load? Because I can see a question where somebody will say, look, you're putting so much less effort into teaching this course, does it count as you teaching a full course or not?
So what we've learned in this project is we've now opened up all the questions that the University of California decided it never wanted to look at. That's one of them, which is why there's 16 task force all running. So this is the way I sleep at night. I think to myself, look, in 11-12, which is what we're really focusing on, because most of these courses are going to be built and offered in 11-12, some of them creeping into 12-13. It won't matter. Because you're going to basically be teaching, in some cases it will, in the self-consciously cross-campus courses, and in one or two other cases it will matter, and we'll make some workarounds, we'll figure it out. But for the next year and a bit, it won't matter, because you're pretty much just doing your own students and whatever. So our aim, is to have all these answers for the beginning of 2012-13, which is why we're killing ourselves this summer to put proposals together that we can run through Senate and other review processes on that question particularly. That will emerge from this budget revenue sharing model, because part of the revenue sharing model is you have to understand, you have to comprehend how teaching credit is given and where FTEs are counted and all that sort of thing. And then let's say we have a couple of options September 1st, then we start a Senate review process, but as importantly as a Senate review process is shopping it around with deans and department chairs and executive vice chancellors. And so while the pilot is actually going forward, we're also running these other tracks which are looking at these audacious issues which we will solve, and frankly, which the University of California needs to solve, in my view, in order to survive and flourish well into the next decade. So I didn't realize that when none of us realized this when we thought we were doing kind of an interesting project in online education, right? It turns out that's not entirely true.
And I think ultimately you're beholden to your campus policies and your department's policies on how you get credit for a course or not, or some of those things. But there are bigger issues that is what has to be a more general discussion. Okay, looks like we're finally ready, I think, to do this. This session is sort of loosely arranged around the idea of student interaction, and that can be interaction in a variety of ways, with another student, with the instructor, even with the content of the course that you have, ways that will enhance the collective view of the material that's being presented and how it's discussed and what people learn from it. So we've got 3 different presentations that look at different aspects of this today, and we're going to start off with It's one that's dealing with actually music, although it doesn't come through quite so much from the title, media sharing and commentary analytics, but Shlomo Dubnov.
So hello everybody. I'll have to kind of roll in and out of the PowerPoint slides and also open up some pages. So in the same spirit of showing, how difficult the setup is and having a live experience of the anxiety of a presenter. This is the title, and I'll talk and then I'll have kind of go back and forth. But the idea is I'm here kind of trying to present two different heads. One is my specific course that was proposed and accepted for the IPP, which has to deal with music. I'm a music technology professor, actually switched hats also before, from engineering to arts. Basically, engineering, we're trying to solve real problems, in arts, we're trying to create problems. So now I'm doing more of that. And my role is to convince that my problems are actually your problems also. So, so there is this course that I'm teaching on music technology or creative production that uses some of kind of web-based techniques. We don't do really online teaching in San Diego, so that's really just my use of online technology. And then there is this other aspect of technologies that we develop related to entertainment and learning, and this is what CREL stands for, Center for Research in Entertainment and Learning. And just the combination of entertainment and learning is, I think, interesting, because I know, as another anecdote, when I first printed the business cards for my center, the typesetting, the person in the printing department, they actually corrected me and wrote Center for Research in Education and Learning, because what does entertainment and learning have to do together, right? So they were sure it's a typo. So it's actually entertainment and learning. It's not education and learning, because I think entertainment has to do a lot with teaching and with public interaction technologies. And this is where some of the technologies they're going to show combine together in the aspects of critical appreciation and peer review techniques, which I think are relevant. So I'll be talking about my course, but also going to show some ideas that we have which were originally applied to entertainment techniques, and try to convince you that the problems that I have in entertainment could be also problems that you would like to do or to solve in your own courses. So, as you set up any presentation, especially if it has to do with technologies, you kind of go to some kind of a setup. So actually, I had all these links that are supposed to go up automatically, right? And I'll just go to editing mode. So I want to open all these pages or tabs before I go to the presentation. And I will be going through them as we talk, so I don't have to go one by one. But the idea was that, and I have to log in as an. So these are various tools that we developed, and I'll have to open a couple more. I just was following some links, so I don't have to go and wait for this as the presentation goes. And in a second, we'll be there. Okay. So we have the PowerPoint slides, right, which is the canonical way of doing presentations. And then we have other things that we might want to do online, right? So, so my need for, you see, and this is not my computer, so it also doesn't load some plugins. Okay, let's hope that things show up. Okay, so here's the first thing, the first page I wanted to show, and this is specifically to my course. Why do I need peer review and teaching students to evaluate each other's work and do whatever kind of critical listening, okay? So in my course, students actually create their own little compositions. Now, here's the technical issue. First of all, we go and we listen to these pieces, but then just having me listen to these pieces and people not sharing or not, not having the option to present it and play it back to their peers and friends. That already is, big aspect of, why they would like to take the course is lost. And then if you take this, if you give this course to a class which is more than, a few individual students, maybe 10, 15 students max, but anything more than that, it becomes impractical. People don't have the time to comment, and the commenting here is in time, right? So actually I was using this commercial SoundCloud.com website, which is an audio sharing thing, and it has this great tool, which is you can actually put your comments while you listen or offline. Just click on this blue line and you enter a comment. Okay, so one of the ways I kind of found out, first of all, well, it's easy to share it, so I don't have to get CDs from people or, have them say, well, I just now didn't burn the CD, it doesn't work, So this way they upload everything on the website, it's more reliable, everybody can see each other's compositions, but then I also use this in two ways. One is for me, an easy tool to browse through works, but then I can give them assignments in two ways. One is I can either ask them to rate each other's, not to rate, there is no sense of rating. You can see the comments. This is really from one of my music classes. They can actually put comments, okay, good introductions, whatever, sets the tone. I like the strong sense of rhythm, okay, very interesting section here, blah, blah, blah. Are these live sounds? And then, well, some of them were, yeah, most of them are positive, but some of them could be more of a question or, transition works well. There were some, okay, I won't go browsing through them, but some of them were more like, I think this is redundant, I think this is too long. So they could be positive, negative. Now, so one thing is I can actually give them assignments of peer reviews, okay? The way it's done here, I don't know exactly who's reviewing because they might want to do this anonymously. So I need little tools of my own to know that, the students peer review anonymously, but I can actually see who was doing that and encourage peer reviews. But then I can even do this in class. So one is giving this as a homework, another one is reviewing this in class. And I can play this composition, and while they listen to the composition, they go online to that same piece, and they actually type in their comments. So then when we're done playing it, okay, I don't end up with having kind of an empty plate here, and well, I'll start talking, and let's see if somebody has to say something about this. Actually, I can go and quickly browse through these things and start a discussion. My starting point for a discussion is already reactions of the public, and this is the same public that takes the course, so it's the engagement part. So here's a technical tool that actually allows me to get comments, and again, if the class is larger than, as I said, 10, 15 students, it's impractical even to start asking people for questions, and here I already have their own reactions. So it's an example of media sharing and commenting that I use. But then I would say in a kind of a little bit broader perspective, thinking, and I'm coming from arts and culture kind of perspective here, one thing about arts in general is that there is some kind of a silent conversation that goes into audience heads when they listen to a piece of music or go to a film or theater. So, and we would like kind of to tap into this, and the whole back channeling is the idea of that. Now, if we speak about oral traditions or improvisation techniques, this is something that is kind of contemporary question where, I have multiple authorships, and one of the practices that starts to be emerging once you put online or you have pieces that are created on the fly is actually people, well, the exegetic practice is actually an old tradition, mostly in religious studies. But the question is, why did somebody do something? So you need the public interpretation actually to bring some kind of a cohesiveness to a situation of multiple authorships. And today, on the web, you see a lot of products which are actually collections of pieces written by different people, and there is no single author to actually bring everything together. So this is why commons become so important. So we had a bunch of different projects, which are artistic projects with these, I don't know if you'll appreciate the projects, but the names, at least we invested in that, Opera of Meaning, Smash TV, Provoke, and I will show you these examples because they're examples of interfaces. So the idea is pretty much like the picture here shows. People do attend the show, they actually open up their website, open up their laptop, or now we have also an iPhone application or smartphone application, and they go on the website that belongs to this specific performance, And we have a dynamic website that actually refreshes as the show goes on, and they can chat and communicate. So we have the back channel, and we can also push them contents which are related to the show. And then we're trying to make this a little bit more smart, and I'll show the technologies. So I would say the most recent kind of server or application that we had, and because I'm showing different projects, I'll emphasize the elements because I think they could be applied to music, not to music, but to teaching. But I mean, this is something that was running in parallel with a performance, which was it was a commemoration of a Holocaust event. We had music performances, we had talks. Now, what you have is pretty much like a Facebook type of thing where people can post comments, and the server actually not only posts comments from the audience and allows them to express their ideas. We have a couple more interesting features. One is people can promote comments of each other, so they will show up on the promoted comments line. And then, in this case, you have this little line called generated topics. In this case, it was not used, but the idea is that we run also text analysis on the comments, trying to auto-tag it, so we can know what the comment was about. And then an additional thing that we have is this recommended, we have articles. So every piece is actually the performance and a database, okay? And in the database, we have recommended articles, or we can have images, and we have all kinds of interactions, so people could click on the image and provide their own title, and that was part of the show. Yes, people would go, and during the show, they would, one section of the performance was they naming these images, and then everybody would share that. So, so here are kind of some basic technologies that we use in performances, and they are, well, share a comment, we have a back channel, and there is a performance going on. So this is in parallel to the show. There is this live feed, which includes also Twitter. We have a tag cloud, which analyzes the back channeling, and we have articles which are related to the event. So the most basic element that we have is actually a server that allows you to plan and push contents on a website in time. So let me just kind of start a presentation like this, okay? And I will show you also the interface. So we have, this is another example of a show that we did, or it was kind of a conference / debate on issues of arts in action in response to the climate issues in UCSD. And what we have here again, we have this back channel of people talking. We have the tag cloud that represents topics, what people were talking about. And this thing should kind of automatically, as the presentation goes, according to the control panel, we actually design a set of activities in time. Okay, so because we know pretty much what the script is, we can actually switch things. And the things that we have different types of widgets. There could be text, there could be polls, there could be tag clouds, and while I'm running the presentation too quick, I mean, it's in about a minute, this slide will switch, and you'll have the next topic with the next set of discussions. You can actually go and find all comments that were related to a specific tag. Now, we started this as a music thing, and then actually we got a grant from KLIT to turn this into some kind of a presentation tool for lectures. And this is where the Provoke came in, and we tried to throw in some of the text analysis and natural language processing technologies. And the final thing was that we actually added this to videos. So here is something that I think could be now a tool which kind of had this long birth process from musical or theatrical performances to lectures to video-based tool. So so here what we have is pretty much all these elements that I was showing before, but focused on the video. So here we have an example of pretty much what we think a presentation consists of. Okay, it consists of the main media, which is your video. Okay, it has comments which are typed in by the audience or by the presenter ahead of time, and they're actually linked to the playhead. So as the playhead moves, the comments, instead of me playing well, I mean, it can play it automatically, okay? And as the presentation goes on, the comments will be,
Hello, everybody.
will be showing up.
I'm Amardo Troisi, and you know, I'll get the kind of obvious thing out of the way first. It's kind of like the title.
Okay, so you kind of get an idea that, you know, you can type in comments, and they're stored in the database with the video. And the video is actually hosted from YouTube, but it could be hosted from any video service that has some API that tells you what the playhead location. So we store the comments, and then actually what we do, we kind of run text analysis on these comments and try to come up with some understanding what it is about. So so this is the process of auto-tagging, okay? And the auto-tagging, we don't do this on the video. I think Matterhorn has some great capabilities to analyze the video for text that appears in the video and actually give you also tagging or searchable capabilities. We do this based on the comments themselves, and we want to integrate that with each other. Then once you have that, we can actually do lots of things. We can create tag clouds, or we can go and click on the RPG, in this case it's role-playing games, and we can have segments in all these videos that actually had comments, or if we had an annotation, then the annotation part that actually speaks about that specific term in that segment of a video. And the last thing was, and I mentioned documents that we also used in live events. Here you upload your documents, and they're also processed by the same text analysis method, and they're also tagged. So we can actually access the document that is relevant to that specific element or part in the movie that spoke about this topic. So now, I mean, what we do with this, that's kind of, I think I'm running out of time, so I'll just kind of show that, you know, there could be all kinds of use cases. For peer review and critical discussion, I kind of demonstrated why it's important. You can actually allow people to upload their final presentations, so like lab reports, final presentations, or general instructional videos. And so I have kind of some more developed learning scenarios, but I think we pretty much ran out of time.
Near the end. If you have something really hot to show, go ahead.
No, I mean, this is kind of more of breaking down the learning activities instead of the artistic aspects. But if you do peer review, so instructor plays a video, students comment, they ask questions, instructor reviews the comments, you can summarize this, then you can open this up to, this kind of documenting how I do this pretty much myself in the music class. There are issues of whether you do this live or pseudo-live, which means it's in time with the playhead, but it's not live in the same, you know, in the same session. Privileges of the user management. Another activity could be, you know, students upload their final presentations, and again, it allows either peer review or instructors review, and you know, peer review could be just sizzle factor, or you upload some forms, and yeah, and any instructional videos. So I think I kind of gave an overall idea of what we can.
So like before, we'll take the time for a few questions if people have them now. And we'll bring the microphone out.
Hi, Shlomo. I love what you're doing. I think it's great.
Thank you.
I just wondered, do you give your students guidelines about how to give feedback to each other? Or do you just leave that completely open and so they decide what kind of feedback to give? Or do you ever try to structure it?
Well, I think it kind of comes as a byproduct of the whole course. Like when we speak about different techniques, we kind of explain how do you do the introduction, what's the role of the rhythm section, and you know what makes a nice effect, and transitions, and you know song form and stuff like that. So they have the vocabulary. I mean, it's really, I wasn't demonstrating, you know, the knowledge part where they kind of learn the terms. So, and then I think the purpose of this peer review technique is actually, I mean, I could start the discussion, but I think, you know, it's kind of a, just get the ball rolling. I mean, they hear me, then next time they have a little bit more. So it's, I think it's kind of a combination of both that actually happens. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, there is one example, okay, that I can show, which we started developing, and this is really just as a conceptual demo. I mean, this is, if it loads, where we thought that, you know, we do need to help students to have forms, because you can define forms. And SoundCloud.com doesn't allow that. So what we do, we actually broke down the appreciation into specific questions, and then you could actually ask them or give them little guidelines of what every question could be. So, like say, whatever his appearance on stage, or his, you know, the role of the drums or the voice qualities. So we can kind of go and do that. It's really not teaching them how to do this, but like, you know, here's feedback, be a judge now, and then you can comment on the arrangement, music, performance, and you go performance or something, and then, you know, poor, okay, good, you can skip, you go to the next thing, and then you can actually, in some cases, go and type in a free response, and so on. Okay, and this free response appears on the website.
Do you use any of this feedback you get from the students to change what you're doing within the course, or to spend more time on something, or?
Well, I think, well, that's a great question, but it's more like my own personal thing. First of all, preparing a lot before and not just walking there and trying to play, it's how you deal with the presentation anxiety, right? So either you work very, very hard and make a perfect presentation, then you spend till the last moment tweaking it, or you just go in there and just, well, flow with the questions. I tend to do the second one. This is why I skip between slides, and, you know, I like to have many windows open, and some people love it and some people get confused, and, you know, comments I get is that my style of teaching doesn't facilitate, you know, notes-taking, lecture note-taking. So I think, and we see this, I think, with a lot of media presentations, that we want to be as slick and, you know, have mostly visuals and music and as little text, and we just deliver the text in the background by us talking, but then it's very hard for them to take notes. If we stick to the PowerPoint, everything's written down, we actually hand it out. So I think in that case, we kind of need to think about these two combined modes. And this is why I think we need to have related documents or lecture notes or stuff that is actually there, but they can actually grab it, they can access it, but it doesn't show on the main presentation, because the main presentation has to be kind of artistic in some sense.
David?
So I'm just trying to imagine how this works then. If I had a lecture,
Mm-hmm.
the students could be on this provoke at the same time as the lecture's going on,
Right.
and working through, you know, doing their comments and stuff, and developing the tags and stuff automatically
Mm-hmm.
as the lecture's going on. Is that correct?
Yes, well, I mean, people do use Twitter as a back channel today. There are even books, mostly for marketing presentations, how to use the back channel in Twitter for your presentations. I think what we try to do is actually, first of all, integrate everything, but then we add this auto tagging and the automatic kind of recommendation of articles or help materials that Twitter doesn't allow. So yeah, so it combines basically these three or four different elements, and this is kind of what is a multi-layered presentation. It has your main video, which is the canned content, canned in the sense that, you know, you cannot modify it too much, okay? But then we have also this dynamic database, which, while they comment and while they chat, based on the analysis of the comment, or if they enter a keyword, it will bring up the slides or an article that is related and that you loaded, but it does not show as part of the slides, okay? And then you can also do some push of additional materials on your own. And in theory, we push polls, so we can push, you know, questions and answers. So it's really an integration of, you know, the back channel, as you suggested, with, you know, quizzes and interactive things that other commercial software do way more effectively. We have it online. It's kind of a poor man's version. And then I think the edge that we try to show that we have is this auto-tagging or natural language processing that tries actually to determine the comments of the students, what was the topic or what was the tag, so it will actually bring up some related materials on this tag from a database. So I confused you.
No, so the question I have is just how much does the instructor have to participate in and manage that, or how to what extent is it just automatic?
Well, I think we have to develop specific scenarios for every use. I mean, the tags should be either automatic or entered by the students, not by the instructor. What the instructor has to do, he has to upload his video, okay? It's very nice if you can annotate it, so we can actually analyze the video. And then he uploads a bunch of articles or help materials to the same website. And that's it, pretty much.
And the software does all the rest with the student involvement? You mean?
Right.
And can this be done with a live lecture then? So this instructor would essentially upload the materials before the lecture. Students have access to the Provoke software,
Mhm.
and then with the live lecture, the students can be working. This
Right. So we ran this on a couple of shows. But we ran this also in one session, which was lectures in KLAT's 10th anniversary, where we had scientific presentations. We never did this in a class where we had structured materials, because it was more meant for a free discussion and suggesting related materials. It wasn't really designed in a way that, you push a question, you push a quiz, and if they answer correctly, something happens if they answer right.
You haven't done that.
It was more for open-ended environments. But I mean, kind of the technology should be able to do that if we, if we actually get the way to do this. I mean, get the funds or something, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we can come back and ask more questions if
All right.
Shlomo do the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yours is on here? Okay. We're going to have a little different viewpoint this time. This is going to be covering some development that's working with a course at UC Santa Cruz that deals with freshwater policy, but we have an instructional designer from Santa Cruz here, Robin Ova, who's going to provide a perspective from the instructional designer how she's been helping Professor Haddad with this development.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. I was called in because Brent could not be here, and it's my honor and pleasure to work with him on this project. My role is more as an instructional technologist. I've been with the campus for 29 years, so I've seen a variety of technologies, and it's always been my distinct pleasure to work with faculty to work towards their dreams and their visions with whatever's practical at the time. The two courses that we're looking at are one that he is currently teaching, and that is freshwater policy. And the other one is a new course that he is designing as sustainable water engineering. And his vision for this, as you see the red kind of swoop, is a thematic trip and a thematic experience on water flows and the impacts to the water flows to not only the environment, the politics, the social aspects, and the science of those water flows. Taking our design team, we have been initiating a number of just brainstorming sessions for him to be able to describe what his vision is of what he wants to accomplish. He has currently been teaching the freshwater policy course in a, I would say, semi-hybrid way for the last couple of years. So his content and his materials are pretty much established in what he wants to use. This is an example of some of the learning outcomes that the students come in looking for the outcomes of his class. And what we're talking about is how do we exchange the engagement of the students in the activities for his vision for his water flow experience in the environmental studies to work through these objectives. So we're certainly looking at student interaction, regional self-organized field trips, and one of the field trips will be at the Big Creek Hatchery, in which we will have a professional shoot and specific shot lists and those kinds of things and questions that are involved for the outcomes of the particular politics, the government guidelines and the rules and just property boundaries and the environment of the water and the flows and the fish and all of those things that come into play. So the students will be actually being filmed while they're at the hatchery doing their field work, their research field work at the hatchery. And then this becomes part of the element of the overall course and water flow, which we'll look at as a couple slides down as our guide. The students will also be engaged in developing content for the course and engaged in developing knowledge for the materials that they are learning. So they will incorporate and help build that course. And part of Brent's vision is that these waterways experiences and this development of content, some portions of it will become public and become an archive to document the California waterways that are endangered and in use. Online discussions, office hours, timed assessments, some of those tried and true activities that many have been doing in hybrid courses will be engendered, but we'll start looking at different ways that the new platform will allow us to make it a little more creative or a little more practical and less time-consuming to engage in. So what we did was look at the planning, and certainly his vision has been big. And if anybody's talked to Brent, the vision is very large. And as a very pragmatic project manager, what I asked him to do was scale down to one unit. And this is kind of my spiel on, covert project management when you do course design, is that take one element or one unit and begin extracting all the layers of things that you want to accomplish in that. Then from there, you can look at how to create some consistency and a model for you to replicate. It's not a template, but it's a guideline for you to put some sanity on your time involvement and what you can actually accomplish. And as a foundation, so that if you don't get to the next cool whiz-bang thing like Shlomo's beautiful examples, you can build maybe a small discussion group, get the experience of that, and get very comfortable with what your presence is required in the success of that, and then build for the next activity. So his vision is a video thread that traces a coastal river located in a public park. So we start at Waddell Creek in northern Santa Cruz County. And so what he's doing, he's actually filmed. This is hot to talk about Kirk. It changed this morning. He's actually filmed about a half an hour with his first video segment that he's been out doing himself. So taking a visual approach to Waddell Creek, and I was going to look because it's really kind of fun. And that's the creek from the ocean, then going up and around. And what we're planning to do is a combination of video annotation and image mapping so that during the course of the hike through Waddell Creek, from the source to the headlands, which is like 35 miles, it's a long course, and look at what are the impacts of crossing a property line, and what are the policies, and what are the laws, and what are the social impacts of doing that, and the related science, the related current events, and those kinds of things to work into that element. Oops. So you can see, if you haven't been there, it is an absolutely gorgeous place, and what a more compelling visual image than to get you to a hike to Waddell Creek. This gives a snapshot of just the map from the experimental ocean site all the way up to the headlands in Big Basin's Redwood Park. So his vision is to annotate and link documents, much like you've been demonstrating, but he has been looking at rebellious pixels in the use of HTML5 and Popcorn.js, which I had to throw just geek talk at you. But what the real fun is the ability, let me change this back to the pointer. Is to give you a sense of what this looks like in his vision. We'll see. Here we go. So as you can see in the video, we have boxes for video source, audio source, source for Wikipedia, and footnotes. So in his vision, he will be able to annotate his trek through Waddell Creek in this way. And I'm just going to run a bit of this, just so you can see that it is dynamically annotated so that the sources change depending on where you are in the time code. Notice it changed. I didn't want to go too far. But it's really rather exciting. What the interesting thing is this is a fabulous vision and the creativity of thinking, him being able to tell his stories and engage in his students in this way. The problem being is this is unstable software in development and not ready for school. So we certainly look at opportunities of how can we replicate things with other commercial softwares or other public domain softwares. But this is part of where you start. Where is my vision? Where is the technology now? And then where can I bridge those gaps? So any good project starts with the back of the napkin, and I know this is very, very pale, but it was our way of helping Brent look at his river. As you can see, this is actually the river from Waddell Creek, and then looking at what type of assets were required for him to accomplish what he needed, because that isn't necessarily his way of thinking. His way of thinking, I teach, I collect my lecture information, I post my notes and my documentation and those kinds of things, but I do this kind of organically. And so for a project management point of view is how do we take that and really drill down to those elements so that we know that perhaps at this hatchery, we can have an online quiz, we can have opportunities for students to upload their videos to YouTube and link them back to the course. We could add a discussion to that and documentation and bring it full circle. I'm almost as passionate as Brent, and bring it full circle to this particular unit. The other thing we started talking about, and that was this little sidebar up here at the top, is thinking about that beautiful Google map of the Waddell Creek area and annotating the Google map with the elements of policy and documents and where does this glass of water go and this salutation device go and those types of things, or where's the best trail. Because his vision is certainly for OIPP and the way he teaches, but again, a number of his ideas want to extend to public access about water issues. So this is Brent's slide, and this is how he's helping himself frame the notion of a storyboard and a timeline. So in his public land and water unit, you can see where he's starting to place in the critical learning pieces of park management, coastal management issues, a coastal commission, crossing boundaries, and those kinds of things, so he can start teasing out the activities, the elements, and the resources that are required for the student engagement, for the assessment, and the acquisition of knowledge for each of those elements. There's Brent. The other thing that we talked about was not only should we have some type of image map and beautiful Google map that's annotated, the wonderful Popcorn JS that's annotated, but it could be within the learning management system or the CMS or the OAE or whatever it's called on tomorrow's talk, is that we should have a linear progression so that those students that don't like jumping around have a syllabus and a linear progression through the materials so that they can always jump back into the unit and know what's required of them. So this is another type of snapshot. It could be done in soft chalk. It could be done in a number of different things within learning management systems that take chunks or nuggets of the waterline story and then applies all the readings and the materials in a very clear snapshot way so that students can stay on track. And that's another element of student engagement, is making sure that they can stay engaged on time and complete on time. So what we've done at Santa Cruz is taken kind of a team approach to helping Brent engage in his vision and actually deliver something that is practical within the time. He will be teaching this class in the fall, and that's why this summer we're working on some video aspects and things like that that he can kind of get a head start, create the assets that he needs for the next generation of this class. So he's certainly our fearless visionary and PI. I'm doing some project management and crowd control is pretty much my role. We have a rich media specialist and webcasting expert. John is here. He's a video producer. Rebecca Pete is with us, and she is an assessment specialist, so doing grading and rubrics and those kinds of things is part of the conversation. And then we also have what we call an instructional technology integrator, and that's the kind of guy that does the programming and gets the widgets. So we are certainly looking to the project to help with more instructional design efforts. It may be that we need some animation design, because we certainly talked about, wouldn't it be great to have some water treatment animations that instead of him talking about them or trying to whiteboard them or number stills, that we have a 30-second animation that says this is how the treatment plant works. So we're looking at other aspects of that. That's us. That's the spiel.
Thank you.
Questions?
I have a question to start with.
Okay.
His vision of the course, could you give some examples of how that might have changed as he's interacted with you or with others in this, from what he might have thought was originally possible to how that has altered as he's learned more?
I don't think his vision is altered, but I think what has occurred is that the notion that I can start building with what's available today to establish best practices and his ability to see what the success is of those things. So certainly the video clips and annotation with popcorn, you know, that's kind of out there. But if we can embed in the notion of the learning management system and kind of that linear chunks, that satisfied him and said, well, I'm willing to try that as long as we keep working on this.
Okay. Questions?
Did you consider...
Here comes the mic.
Did you consider using Google Earth at all, or maybe integrating Google Earth to this? Because as you talk, I don't mean to add one more thing here, because I don't want to break the camel's back.
Absolutely looking at those as possibilities. He's certainly, you know, environmental studies and water flows, mapping is a huge attribute. So he's looking at that. I don't know. Again, I would say he's probably looking at each element within the sections to see where it makes sense on doing that. But yes, some aspect of Google Earth interaction.
The reason I ask is because you can tag two spots in Google Earth, multiple different types of media, and it just seemed like it would fit so nicely with your project.
I agree. That'd be really great. Anything else?
Robin, you mentioned at the beginning that the students' creation of content would be a feature of the course, and I'm wondering if you could describe that a little bit. And then I'm also interested if you have articulated, or if Brent has, assumptions that you might be making about what a student can and cannot create within a technology platform.
That's a great question. So the question was regarding student-created material and the preparation. What assumptions made about their ability to do things, and what kind of things were we thinking about doing? There's two aspects of particularly video creation and interviews that he has been looking in. One aspect is to take the standard water policy course and adding a lab, and then working with the campus social documentation major, have students enroll in the lab to actually document portions of the course on the waterways or interviews, and so that then they have a very regimented and experienced group in social documentation that he could work with and not have to teach a lot of video skills and all of editing skills and those kinds of things. And then within the parameters of the lab, they would actually be generating content for the course. So that's one aspect of it, where they would actually be a part of the course but not exactly part of the standard 165 element. In addition to that, we were looking at one aspect of the sustainable Water Sustainable Engineering course, where actually UC Santa Cruz has partnered with the Watsonville Water Treatment Plant. And they go out there as a field trip for a week and do research work. And so looking at the cohort of the students in that class and do group video assignments with some just real rudimentary stuff, you know, small inexpensive phones, reasonable miking, you know, for audio and those kinds of things, so that they have a list, a shot list or question list or a research topic that they're supposed to respond to, and then they upload that either to YouTube in a protected space or those kinds of things. But just short 3-minute, small duration, but within a specific deliverable of what those types of things are. And then they would get course credit for that piece.
Anything else?
Research centers, curious if you're connecting to other research centers in the UC dealing with water, so that you actually create a network of this knowledge and connect students in different UC campuses doing this research?
That would be a question for Brent.
wouldn't you
I
know
imagine he does that in his capacity. He's a director of a center, so I'm sure he's engaged with other centers. But I would be happy to take that back to him. I just don't know the answer to it.
I just think it would be really interesting to even map who's doing research on water and the UC system, and then have students access that research and be aware. So it doesn't necessarily mean making an elaborate program or trying to deal with the registrar, but just to have the awareness of the UC system being active in the water issues that are critical for California. So please take it back.
I
to
will
him.
take that back.
I'm sending him an email, actually.
Oh, terrific. Send him an email. The other response to that is that as part of his mission that some of this material be public, I think he has a kind of anticipation of a social connection of like sources just to grow organically, but I like the idea of a little more direct outreach in some things. The other component that he's looking at, especially for the online version of this course, is how to replicate this virtual field trip that may be a requirement for the regional students that actually can get together, but it's actually a checklist and a methodology that anyone in the world could visit any of their water sources, and they would have the social questions, the political questions, the science questions, and the environmental questions that they could actually self-learn as they go through a trek through a waterway.
I love this idea, and I hear many times people thinking of these kind of ambitious visions, but to actually implement it, there's almost a problem of wanting to be the one to implement this grand plan instead of thinking to identify all who are working on this grand plan. In other words, when I do a search on what you guys are doing right now while you're talking, there's not much there, but when I listen to you, I can see that the vision is fantastic and it makes sense, and it's a shared vision, actually. There's a lot of people thinking the same way around an issue that actually crosses disciplinary boundaries in a major way. So whether you're thinking molecular scale of water or field trekking or social issues or political issues, it all has to be part of the discussion. So I think I'm saying this in general, it's really about thinking about how do we map what's being done already rather than putting out an ambitious plan that is not going to work if you just try to do it by yourself, basically.
I appreciate that a lot, and that's part of my goal is actually to scale down to what's achievable for these two courses and let the larger vision evolve with Brent in his work in research and academic work. to some degree, only because I have limited resources to be able to apply to this.
No, I appreciate your practicality, and I think it's important, but I think my point is actually about sharing resources and knowledge with the students and the awareness. So yes, it should be scaled down, absolutely, but they should be aware of each other in the UC system. I want to know who's working with water in the UC system. I don't.
Right,
so
and I don't.
It should
I
start
don't either
there.
yet. Yeah,
It should start there, and it should be the same for music, for social issues, whatever. And if I was a student, I would want to go to UC Santa Cruz for a particular course that you're talking about. Then it starts making sense why we would want to do this.
And I think that's an element of the types of assets that you collect on a particular segment as well. When we looked at the mashup up here and there was a section on Wikipedia or something like that, if that's publicly available, that's something perhaps that can grow organically even. The people could kind of add in themselves. That's the beauty of that. So time.
Okay, our final speaker for this session is Frank Vahid. He's going to talk about programming embedded systems and interacting with the content there.
All right, thanks for your patience there. Tony at Irvine and myself at Riverside, our focus is going to be here on engaging the students with the material. And so 2 principles that have been guiding us, and according to the second one there, I'll go ahead and just get right into it. We're going to talk about what we're doing with Learn by Doing. So first of all, what's the course that we're teaching? It's programming embedded systems. An embedded system is a computer that's inside something else. So a computer inside tennis shoes, a coffee maker, an ATM machine, a keyboard, medical instruments, a soda machine, automobiles. About 1/4 the cost of an automobile today is for its computers and the software, millions of lines of code, believe it or not. And so it's basically about programming that little chip that I have off on the left there. It's got 16 pins on the sides, and programming that is a completely different world than programming a desktop computer. These things started to be developed and courses started to evolve in the late 70s, early 80s. Back then we were programming toaster ovens, washing machines, and it was all about getting that chip to communicate with other components, the keypad, switches, little motors. And so those courses were developed, and they were all about those components and how to get these things working together and how to get a working system. Unfortunately, today, when we have not tens or hundreds of lines of codes inside those processors, but millions, there's no programming discipline that is really common in these courses. And so the standard is that students hack the programs, and they can build the systems, but then the programs are horrible. And this is actually a big crisis in the field. Literally many hundreds of millions of dollars of losses because of projects that go on for years and never make it to market, or losses in lawsuits because medical devices end up hurting people because the software had bugs in it. So it is a major crisis right now. A lot of emphasis at National Science Foundation, DARPA, and so on how to make embedded systems programming better. What we've been focusing, Tony and I, myself and I, starting 10 years ago, we wrote our first textbook on this, trying to raise the discipline of embedded systems, and very, very recently, trying to change the way that they're programmed so that you don't think in terms of the code on the bottom right, but you think in terms of those high-level models. What should the system be doing? And so those are state machines, what we call them, and it basically just says, you know, if you're in a certain condition and the user presses this button and this button at the same time, how should the system respond? It's a lot of high-level abstract thinking. And then we use what's called, what I tell my students is something that a 6th grader could do if you taught them, to convert that thing on the top to the code on the bottom. So they shouldn't be thinking of the code, they should be thinking of the models. That's the essence of the course that we're teaching. And that's the main thing we want them to get out of it. And we want them to do it well, and there's a skill and there's an art to that. So it requires a lot of practice to do it well, just like surgery requires a lot of practice to do it well. So what's our solution is to introduce this virtual lab. So if anybody's done any sort of this programming, maybe some of the computer science guys here, you know that there's a lot of tools that you have to learn in order to actually get something working, and that distracts from actually understanding what the programming that you're doing. So what we did was we developed, with the help of NSF CCLI funds, a virtual lab. And so what you see there is something that kind of looks like a chip. The big white box in the middle is supposed to be the chip. And you can see the pins on the sides. There's 8 pins on each side, okay? And then off on the left, you can see it's hooked up to the switches. And off on the right, it's hooked up to lights. So the student gets an impression that this chip is embedded into something, right? It's embedded between those components. And then all that the student has to do is start typing inside that box there. And the program goes directly into, oh, come on, play. Nothing's happening. There we go. They type directly inside that box. And so normally there's several different tools they have to use, and that distracts from their actual thinking of the higher level concepts. Once they're done typing inside that box, their program, all they have to do is press some buttons at the top and it starts to run. And what you can see is that their switches on the left have been moved, and you can see some of the lights on the right have turned green, okay, on the upper right there. And they have basically a working embedded system, although it's all on this animated environment here. They can step along, and so they can see how their program is working. And this is actually going in step mode. You see that little arrow on the left that's jumping around. That's showing exactly where they are in their program. Okay, so that's the basic tool. Then we added to that this tool that allows them to do those higher level state machines in an automated way also. So this used to be all paper and pencil, and in most courses, if they do cover this higher level approach, it's paper and pencil. Instead, we developed this tool that allows them to do it all graphically, and once they're done capturing that, they can actually, again, just press a few buttons, and what'll happen is we get that sort of 6th grade translator that generates the program automatically. And here's our original tool there with the chip. And what you can see is that it's actually running, and the state machine and the correspondence with the program can be seen directly by the student. So they can play around with this and basically get better at this skill the skill and the art that we want them to develop. When they're done, they can press another button, and what we get is a history of what they've done. And that's currently what they're turning into us, and there's the history. It's called the timing diagram. It shows us exactly what they've done and how their system responded, so we can see if they did it properly. So that's our virtual lab. That was about 1,200 person hours of development to build that, and it still could be a lot better too, I'll tell you that. So that's our learn by doing part of it. We use that for all our lecture homeworks. It's been a huge improvement over paper and pencil. Okay, the other thing that we've been focusing on is this less is more concept. So we needed a new book for this. One thing that we noticed is that students just don't read the books, right? So, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right? There's a lot of studies that have shown, a continual decline in how much students are working outside of class as well as reading. And there's a lot of things we can't control. But there's some things we can, and that's how much information we throw at the students, right? This is one of the most popular introduction to programming books used in the world. It's 1,500 pages long. I mean, that's just too big. Even if you assign readings, certain sections, those sections are long. They're just very long. And there's a lot of reasons why the books are long, and I've written 3 so far, 2 with major publishers, and I can expand on that later if you want to know why these books are so long. And that's not the worst problem. It gets even worse because now slides are a standard part of any book. The author is expected to provide slides. And so those are usually given to the students also. Then there's class notes. There's a lab manual. There's lab assignments. There's a simulator you have to learn. There's homework. There's assignments. There's the course management system. There's announcements on there, right? There's URLs that you point them to. There's handouts in class. And the students are just absolutely overloaded. And so what ends up happening is, in my opinion, a lot of them just say, well, it's just too much. I don't know what to do, right? Imagine if the organizers of this conference told us to read 2 pages before we got here. We'd probably all read it. But if they asked us to read 20 pages, a lot of us probably wouldn't have. And if those 20 pages, 2 were at a website and 1 was on the course management system and 6 were over here and 1 was by email, even fewer of us would have read it. We would just show up and hope things worked out, right? And I think that's what students are doing. They just show up to their exams and hope things work out. So the other thing that is happening is that books are actually going up in cost, and there's some real data that shows that they've outpaced inflation by a factor of 4. So the line at the bottom, the dotted line at the bottom is inflation, and the solid line is the cost of textbooks. And so you can see it's magnified by 4. And that top line is the cost of tuition. Okay, so what was our solution there? Let's make a really short book. I read this other book once on illustration, and it had such an impact on me. What they said was an illustration is not done when you can add no more. An illustration is done when you can remove no more. You want the simplest possible depiction of your concept. And so that kind of guided the way we wrote this book. We ended up writing a full quarter book that's only 120 pages long, okay? And the way we were able to get it down to 120 pages, we really just focused on essentials. We eliminated more than 50% of the material from the course. We simply don't cover it, okay? And the book itself is not a reference. A lot of books try to be both an introduction and a reference. We don't need the reference part of it anymore. You just point them to the web. So we have links to the web on for the reference stuff. And we don't try to cover everything in the book. This fire hose approach, which is what an MIT professor explained to me how they teach things, blast students with as much information as they can and hope that they soak up some of it, right? To me, that's old school university. I think and I know this is sort of sacrilege in some circles to talk like this, but I honestly think a lot of it is just academic hazing, and we need to move away from that. So another thing we did is we don't use slides. And that was for our own purposes. We didn't want to have this redundant information. Having done 2 previous books, I found it's just really hard to keep them in sync. So we just, since the book is short enough and it has enough figures, we just put the book up in PDF. It's a PDF, right? And we put that up and we just walk through it, and those are our slides, right? We just put up a picture and we talk about the pictures, and there's some bolded text and so on, and then we go to the board and do things. And it's worked out really well for the instructors, but surprisingly to me, students love this too. And in their evaluations, they say, oh, that's great that you put the book up so we don't have to relate the slides and the book. So that was actually surprising. What we have found is most students now read and study all 120 pages. And they're doing better not only at the end of the course, but they're doing better in the senior design project 2 quarters later. So they're retaining the information. So we've offered this course. It's still a physical course. We've offered it 7 times in the last 2 years, 5 different teachers. We make very extensive use of that virtual lab in the ebook. Well, we still have a physical lab and a lecture. Very good feedback. Student performance is strong so far. So where is this going, and how does it relate to the online course project? Well, look at the past. The past, a textbook author wrote a book. Today, an engineering textbook author writes the book, has to create the slides, okay? My previous book has 600 slides that I made. It's about an hour per slide, so imagine how much time that is. By the way, the book takes 3 to 4 hours per page. I measured it, so imagine how long it takes. Then you have to create a solutions manual. We have a 200-page solutions manual. It's a book in itself. Instructors now demand a lab manual because, God forbid, they have to come up with their own in a lot of schools. So we have to make that. We created this simulator and this virtual lab. Now you've got things like Course Smart. Somebody mentioned that earlier, right? It's expected that you post homeworks, that you have quizzes. You're creating the entire course, right? So what's the next evolution? The author just creates what Tony and I have been calling a course in a box. We add a few video lectures, short ones, the way that we were looking at earlier, and the exams. And that's it. That's the whole course right there. Just a couple more components and you're done. And in the future, we'd like to see more interactive tools like some automatic checking, correcting, hinting, things like that. It could get better. Then, as long as I've created the whole course, I may as well just teach it, okay? I may as well just run it, right? So I can just decide when the assignments are going to be posted and decide when the exams are going to be given, right? And maybe offer some online or Skype help in office hours, or maybe have some people that work with me do that. And ultimately, I can just assign the grades the way, the AP exams are essentially the grade for the course, or the GRE is a grade, right? Externally determined grade. So you get a lot of economy of scale, and you get a lot of quality of scale if you're starting to do things, for larger numbers of universities, larger numbers of students. Common question I get: why? Why would a professor want to have a course that's being broadcast out to other places like that? And the answer is very simple. The same reason they write textbooks. Okay? They want to influence the field. They want to move the field in a certain direction, which was Tony and mine's original goal. And they want the prestige, obviously, as like a textbook author, you know, having some impact on the field, and they want the royalties. And the same thing applies to courses. An online course, in my opinion, is just the next evolution of a textbook. So, all right, thanks.
Questions? Arnold?
How common is a course like you're teaching? Would it be something that every campus of UC would be offering, or having your online course would serve as a substitute for some campuses?
So 8 of the UCs offer it. It's also quite common, you know, most engineering schools, most schools that have an electrical engineering or computer science department today have an embedded systems course. They're very hard to set up. They take a long time. A lot of schools don't have them because they take a long time and it requires a fair amount of expertise to maintain them. So one of the goals that we had was, number one, for the UC that doesn't have it, that we would offer it, and we've actually talked to them, and they want to require our course for their students, so that way they wouldn't have to go through the effort of doing it themselves. Also, to be able to give students more flexibility, because even though every UC has one, 8 of them have them, they usually are just one quarter that they are able to offer it, right? And if the student can't take it that quarter, then they get delayed in graduation. A lot of times this course is required for some majors. So to be able to give them some flexibility where if it wasn't available that quarter on their own campus, they could take it somewhere else online.
I have sort of a long, complex, multi-pronged question in the beginning of your talk, and the end of your talk helped me to frame it in relation to the title of the panel, which is student interaction.
Your framing was long and complex.
So you started your talk talking about embedded systems. You ended your talk saying that online learning is like a textbook online. And I think those two statements, I think that your end statement contradicts the potential of what exactly you're doing with embedded systems. And one of the things that concerns me about listening to what's going on with online learning is the idea that it is a textbook online, because I don't think that exploits the potential of the medium. And when we first started the web, we thought about it as, let's put brochures on a screen. That's not exploiting the potential of the web, and we came up with other things like social media and more spatial uses of the web. But online learning doesn't have to be limited to that screen. So ubiquitous computing is next generation computing. Right now, our main embedded system is a cell phone. I went to Hong Kong for a e-learning conference in November, and they are so far ahead of us in terms of using mobile computing for e-learning. And I'm thinking about what you were talking about with the field work and the potential there for the use of locative media for online learning. I'm also thinking about what's coming up with the next generation of kids being completely socialized with haptic interfaces. And how can we use that in online learning, particularly for hands-on things like building, and how you can use things like a Wii or a Microsoft Kinect or a number of other gesture-based interfaces that are out there to actually reach into space instead of just have a screen where you're moving circles around. That's where we are now, perhaps. But what's coming up, what the kids growing up are used to, is being able to physically interact and move through space and move into the screen and have the screen move out to them. And so I think we need to get way beyond this idea of online learning being a textbook on screen, because that's so limiting in terms of how we can think about the potential of the media. And I mean, field work is a great application of locative media, augmented reality, archaeology, architectural history, any sort of botany or work with streams. Anything where you have to build, I think, is a great application of haptic interfaces, like things like engineering, take nanotech particles and be able to get in there hands-on and move things around and not just think about them. I mean, to me, that idea of online learning being a textbook on the screen is so disembodied, and learning can be so embodied.
Perhaps I misspoke. I didn't mean to. I completely agree with you. And it's not that an online course is a textbook on the computer, but rather an online course is the evolution of the concept of a textbook into the 21st century, which is much more than just text now. It would be, look at our virtual lab. The idea is that you give them the tools, you give them the information, the words, the pictures, the videos, and the interactive tools. And that to me is the biggest thing about the online is you can interact, you can do virtual dissections, you can do virtual programming, you can do all these really neat virtual things so that you can get constant feedback and learning in that way. So I didn't mean to say that just take the book, put it in PDF, and that's an online course. I meant to say online courses in all its beauty and all its completeness is the evolution of the concept of a textbook from the 60s.
But I think also as we talk about where we're going with online learning, keeping in mind what's coming down the line so we can build the pedagogical framework in a way that anticipates what's coming, instead of just thinking more linearly about what is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think the embedded systems, that's just juicy and exciting in terms of how that will become part of
it is
virtual
juicy.
learning.
I agree.
So the book took hundreds of years to develop, and it's one of the best interfaces for reading. And that's not going to change. I think it's great that you have it online to download, and I like to read physical books, and I love the idea of print on demand. Is that how you're doing it? Are you doing a print on demand?
It's available in two forms. Actually, I should mention that because the earlier speaker said that most people are buying the hard copy. Ours is available as an ebook, and it's available as hard copy. And
but as a hard copy, is
print
it
on
demand?
demand. It's through Lulu.
And so, if it's print on demand, why is it $50? If it's it seems kind of expensive.
First of all, let me address one before I forget. We've had probably 300 students take the course over the last 7 offerings, and only 3 have bought the hard copy. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Why is it $50? We set it at $50. It's that's about half the price, less than half the price of a competitive engineering book. The actual printing cost is, I don't know, it's probably $18 that Lulu wants, and then Amazon marks it up another amount, and it just, it adds up. So how much is the author's getting? It's about $10 a book, which is about the same you get for a $130 book published through one of the big companies. So. Well, I mean, it's about $16, $17 for the actual just printing of it, right? That's what Lulu charges, right? And then Amazon marks it up, basically doubles it. You can get this price down more, and in fact, for UCI students, we do it for $25. So because it's local campuses, but there's also the concept that we're not getting rich off of this. Believe me, if I do one patent case, okay, I can make more than I. So this is about influencing the field primarily, but at some point you have to think of this that professors aren't going to sit down and build all these materials. This took a lot of time, okay, for nothing, right? I mean, there needs to be something coming back to the professors.
Labor this, but speaking entrepreneurially and in terms of microeconomies, if you start having that book accessible to the entire planet and you charge $10, you can become rich.
It depends on the subject, right? So yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I think your subject actually can reach a huge audience. I mean, think of China. For instance,
if we were writing a book where the volumes were such that there was an economics book that sells 400,000 copies or something like that each edition. So yeah, if you're writing in those volumes, certainly, but programming embedded systems is not that large, not that size of a market.
I think it is actually.
Well, it's not. I'm telling you. I mean, there's.
I mean, if you think of markets in India and China and you translate the book, it could be a big market. I mean, why is that really something?
Well, we did another book in 2000, and it's one of the best-selling embedded systems book in the entire market. The entire market worldwide is 20,000. So.
Allison Muddett is our new director of UC Press. She's struggling with a very challenging budgetary environment. I know there's a lot of real and compelling access in open access forms of, in sustaining open access forms of publication and driving down costs to students. We should really probably make that a topic for, it could be a breakout session. I know Arnold has something to say about open access, as do others, and sustaining it. So we could add that to the list. It's a really good topic, and it you know, of interest in a variety of ways to folks here.
Any other general questions for anybody?
I wanted to make a comment. Let's not lose sight of what the idea behind the creation of this online course is. It is a perfect example of authentic teaching, where you're teaching something that a student will take and put into a corporate environment and actually use exactly the same thing that he was doing in the class, using the same kinds of tools, the same kind of processes, the same kinds of procedures. And that's exactly what we want to try to do, is we want to try to create courses that actually teach retention of skills. So when they actually go into the job in the marketplace, there's a direct one-to-one correlation between the teaching and the actual one of producing.
Have we switched to the general?
So my question is, since this panel is about student interaction and small group work, I took from that presentation that some ways that the virtual lab enables the student to interact with the virtual lab. But I wonder if there's anything else about interaction that happens in your course, right? Does something about the software allow the students to interact with you or to interact with one another? And so if so, I didn't want you to stop talking without telling us about that too.
The lab, is this on? Yeah, the lab itself doesn't have any sort of interaction, and to be honest, in some ways, I think interaction, it has a very important role, but in some places it has no role. And I think students, when they're learning something very technical, sometimes the best thing is for them to just sit quietly by themselves, think, work through things late at night, whenever they do it. And what they need is an ability to get their answers answered. And fortunately, Google helps a lot in that sense now. I learned iPhone programming on my own, and whenever I had a question, I just typed the question on Google, and up came the answer on some developer's forum. So that interaction has been replaced. That question interaction has been replaced by information online.
One thing that's anomalous to university life is that in the real world, most people work in teams. And I wondered, for embedded systems where you have millions of lines of code, often the most difficult thing is to have one person write some code here, another person write some code here, and have them interface correctly. I don't know if you have any exercises that emphasizes the integration of code from different sources.
So this is a common question when we start talking about having people do things on their own. They say, well, what about the collaborative aspect of engineering, right? And the answer, I think, is that we need both. And so I don't think online will ever completely replace interaction. We need some things where people work in groups, some things where they talk to professors, and some things, like what I showed you, where they just sit quietly and do things and really intensely study something. So in our curriculum, absolutely, we have that sort of stuff. But if you look at an engineering curriculum, you could probably shave off half the classes, literally, maybe more than that, move them completely online with no interaction with other students, and leave the other 50% for the more collaborative stuff, the interaction, the motivation that they get from faculty and TAs, and the social happiness that they get from being around other people too, and the motivation that they get from that. So I think we need both of those things to develop.
I had a question for Shlomo. Is that how you say it? Where did provoke come from? Maybe you said, but I didn't catch that.
Well, I mean, the answer will be very strange. I mean, it came from Talmudic tradition of commentary. Really, I mean, it came from a piece I wrote, which was about the interpretation. I mean, it was based on a Talmudic text, and when I was dealing with the text, what I realized was that it's text to be debated, not text to be performed. So then the aspects of public participation was basically central to that piece. But I would like kind of to comment maybe on the whole evolution of publishing, which is, I think, came through the discussion. And that is that, if you look at the web publishing versus paper publishing, I mean, today the pages are dynamic. They're not single pages, right? And the big difference is that there is basically a database behind it and some business rules. So we interact, and then there's a computer that decides for you what actually you're going to see, right? Now, of course, we can do also books like this, but I think it needs this infrastructure. And now, actually, the web moves to be social web. So now it's also not only has individual input that basically the rules interpret, but they also interpret maybe group rules. So I think in that sense, there isn't much distinctions. We can see all of this as a process of basically modifying the publishing methods. I think maybe the only difference that we still have is that, both the printed media and the web, the way it works, don't implicitly deal with time. And if teaching is a performance aspect, then it's a little bit different. So how do you deal with the thing that you want to create tension, you want to resolve tension, or you want to create a quiz, So this is really something that I don't think really the publishing still knows how to deal with. But that's kind of the next phase, maybe.
All right, well, we probably should move on to the next area. Is still planning? Breakouts. We'll see who's organizing. Oh, there you are. Are we ready to do the breakout? Sure. Okay. Thanks to the panel members for